Being a filmmaker, I thought I should give a film touch to my talk. I'm calling it Walking on the Edge. There are a few quotes from a few of my favorite films that I will be presenting to you all, and also talk about a few instances from my life that relate to those quotes. Here's the first one from the film XMen. Just because someone stumbles and loses their path doesn't mean they are lost forever. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I joined engineering to take up a good job, make a lot of money, and settle down in life. But my childhood craze towards dance choreography led me to a different path. Uh, so when I was in my, sixth semester is when I gave my first dance performance on a really big stage, which was an inter-college festival. From there on, my focus shifted from studies to dance choreography. When I was in my seventh semester, I choreographed a dance piece which we performed in a lot of colleges, won a lot of prizes. However, in one festival which happened in north of Bangalore, though we got a tremendous response from the audience, we realized that we were disqualified since we exceeded the time limit. I knew about the rules, however, in the previous festivals where we performed, that rule was ignored since dance piece was considered special, which didn't happen this time. I was heartbroken. I went back home, locked myself up for 3 days, couple of days actually, introspecting. Why did this happen to me? During those days is when I got the clarity what I want from my life. I want to be a filmmaker. This was not out of the blue because when I look back now, the reason I chose mechanical branch is because someone told me that you can repair film projectors if you become a mechanical engineer. I'd also written a story which I didn't know what I would do with when I was in my final year diploma. And this incident which happened in my life actually gave me the direction and gave me a clarity. So though I stumbled and lost my path, I was not lost forever. I came back strong and with a very clear vision. Moving forward, here is the next quote from the film Three Kings. The way it works is you do the things you're scared shitless of, and you get the courage after you do it, not before you do it. So the first big decision that I had to take that I was scared shitless of was not to take any campus recruitment interviews when I was in my engineering. Though 90% of my classmates got placed, my plan was to pass out of engineering, take up a call center job, work in the night shift, and dedicate my daytime towards preparing to become a filmmaker. I gave a lot of interviews once I passed out, got rejected in the very first round in every interview because I couldn't hold conversation in English for more than a minute, and I also had a mother tongue influence in my language. Went back to the drawing board, spent about 2 months. I took up a course where I worked on neutralizing my English accent and building the confidence that is required for me to converse in English. I think the third interview after I finished this course, I cracked it and got my first job in an Australian debt collection process. It was a call center job. Let's call it Company A, 6th of October 2006. I have a lot of decisions like this which I had to make going forward, which I will talk about. I want to move on to the next quote now from the film Shawshank Redemption. I'm sure you all have heard of it. I can't sound like Morgan Freeman, but I'll try to retain the intonation. Oh, Andy loved geology. I think it appealed to his meticulous nature. Geology is a study of pressure and time. That's all it takes, really. Pressure and time. I used to come back home at very odd hours since I was working in a night shift job. And the moment I decided I want to become a filmmaker, I had to expose myself to world cinema. So the routine was to watch one American film per day. For the first 3 months, I really had difficulty because I used to be exhausted by the time I come back home. And watching a film with a sensibility that was very new to me was really tough. In about 3-4 months' time, I got used to it. So the Company A, where I worked for 1 year, I moved to Company B, where I worked for 2 more years, and then moved to Company C, where I worked for another 1 year. In those 4 years, I watched 1 film per day during the weekdays and 6 to 8 films over the weekends. So in a matter of 4 years, I had watched about 2,000 odd films, and I took a couple of theater workshops and filmmaking workshops during that time. So my point is, study of pressure and time. It's basically keeping the focus and doing things that you think will take you closer to your dreams, day in and day out, and making it a habit. And also having the patience to understand that nothing worthwhile comes easy. You should have the patience to wait for it. So I kept the pressure on by watching one film per day, and I waited for 4 years before I made my next move. Moving on to my next quote from Dark Knight, Joker. Madness is like gravity. All it needs is a little push. So, after 4 years, I would say by the end of 4th year is when I had to make my next move. I started looking for a few filmmaking courses outside of India. That's when I came across a film school called NIFA in Los Angeles, Hollywood. The second decision I had to make, which I was scared shitless of, is to quit my job, withdraw my PF money, go to US and do the course, and then see what happens next. My parents were supportive. I decided to quit the job. I also got accepted in the school. However, I had to get a US visa. So I went to Chennai for the interview, US Embassy. 2 questions, and the visa was rejected. Because I was an engineer going for a short-term filmmaking workshop. Came back home dejected. I was really upset, depressed. Spent a couple of days grieving about it. I don't know what gave me the courage till date, but once I got the salary for the month, I withdrew the salary and applied for the visa interview one more time. So 6 days from the first time my visa was rejected, I was back in Chennai again. Call it a miracle, I got a 5-year student visa this time. 21st of November 2010, for the first time ever in my life, I walked into an airport, I saw a plane from this close, I got into it and flew to Los Angeles. Spent about 3.5, 4 months in LA and met a lot of great people, filmmakers, learned a lot. My plan was to come back to India, take up a job as an assistant director in the local film industry and then move up. However, little did I know that ADs back then were not being paid. I was in a deep debt of about 4 lakhs since I had already spent my PF money. So there was no other way out. I had to go back and join the same call center job in company D. So I started working in this company, but I still had to keep the pressure on, which meant I continued watching 1 film per day, which I used to do before. Along with that, I also made 1 short film of 30 minutes duration and another feature film of 2-hour duration, which was a very low budget film. We spent just about 2 lakhs. That was made just to get a hang of making a feature film and not for release. However, the producer who invested in that second film said that he would be interested if I make a theatrical film, if he likes the story. It was an opportunity that I didn't want to miss. I started thinking about the concept, spent a couple of months and arrived at the idea of my first film, theatrical film, called Shuddhi. Spent about 9 months working on the script, and I was doing all of this as I was working in the night shift job with Company D. Pitched the idea to the producer, he loved it, and he was on board. The budget of the film was about 1 CR, which means I couldn't juggle with my night shift job and also shoot the film. So my condition to the producer was, could you please take care of my EMIs, which was about 50K, including my house rent, every month till I finish shooting the film. Post which, we'll see what happens. So that I can quit my job and shoot the film. He agreed for it. May 2014, I quit my job from Company D. I still remember the status on Facebook, over and out. I'm not going to come back to the corporate world. So I went back, I spent about 3 months on the pre-production of the film and 2.5 months on the production, which means shooting. The day after we wrapped the shoot, we didn't have money. We were out of funds. Forget about my EMI. We didn't have money to buy a hard drive and start editing the film. Spent about 3 months sitting around waiting for things to work out. Nothing, things were not moving forward. And every month I waited, there was a 50,000 rupees burden on my head. So after 3 months, there was no other way out. I had to once again go back to the corporate world, join the same night shift job in Company E. I used to clock in at 10 p.m., clock out at 7 a.m. 3 months down the lane as I started working with this company, I borrowed 50K from my friend. I bought a new hard drive and I started editing the film on my home laptop with a 3 GB RAM. It was a pain. And then 6 months down the lane, I realized that I'm once again eligible for another personal loan over the loan I already had. Another decision I was scared shitless of, but I still had to take it. I went on and took a 10 lakh loan, put that into the film, spent another 1 year juggling between the night shift job and the post-production of the film, which was editing, color grading, sound design, all of that. End of 2016, the film was ready. I called the producer, showed him the film, he loved it. Thankfully, his situation was slightly improved by then, and he was able to arrange the money to release the film. Once again, I told him that I have to quit the job now because I have to promote the film. So could you please take care of my EMIs one more time? He agreed for it. Jan 2017, I quit my job. Feb 2017, the trailer of the film was launched. It became viral. We were trending at number 3 on YouTube. 17th of March 2017 is when the film was released. We had about 56 houseful shows in the first week, and the film went on to complete a 100-day theatrical run. I was so honored to hear that the film was declared the best film of 2017, and I was declared the best director of 2017 by Karnataka state government. And I was also glad to hear that Netflix wanted to buy the film for a really good price, which they eventually did. So right now, Shuddhi is streaming on Netflix. Because of all the mileage I got from Shuddhi, I was obviously able to find the producers for my next film, titled Bhinna, which recently launched on Z5 on 8th of October. First Kannada film ever to have a direct digital release. And I'm currently writing my 3rd film, and I have a couple of producers interested to invest in the film. And thankfully, I didn't go back to my corporate job. So it was my madness that drove me to go for a visa interview second time. It was my madness that made me quit my job so many times and keep going back. It was my madness that drove me during those 2 years when I was struggling between my job and the post-production of my film. It just needed a push, and I gave it. And the reason I call this walking on edge is simply because in all those companies where I worked for about 9 years, I had the opportunity to move up the hierarchy, become a team leader, become a manager. I denied. I didn't want to give myself any choice. I wanted to become a filmmaker, and that's it. I didn't want any other alternative or a fallback option. In other words, I chose to walk on the edge towards the Pacific is what I call. And the reason I use the word Pacific in my career, Pacific is basically making bigger films for a larger audience. And another reason I use the word Pacific is because I'm sure you've all heard of the film, The Shawshank Redemption. If I'm Andy Dufresne, and in the context of the film, if I call the corporate world as the prison, with all due respect, the poster of Rita Hayworth on the wall of my cell is the short films I made, the feature films I made, the workshops I took. Behind the poster, I dug a tunnel and made my way out to freedom. To cap this off, I have one last quote from The Shawshank Redemption. Andy Dufresne, who crawled through a river of shit and came clean on the other side. Andy Dufresne headed to the Pacific. Thank you so much.